Would acquiring DeAndre Hopkins make the Baltimore Ravens instant Super Bowl contenders? We talk about that, how likely it is with updates that DeAndre Hopkins becomes a member of the Ravens. We'll also talk about Odell's deal, Lamar's contract situation, of course, draft talk with that coming up and much more. Coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in here to another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here with us today, making us your first listen each and every day, whether this is your first time listening or you're an everydayer and listen every day here on the show. Again, free and available, all podcasting platforms, including over on YouTube, so you can subscribe for free, both in video form and in audio form, for 5 days a week of Ravens content. And today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by HelloFresh. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. Go to HelloFresh.com/NFL60 and use code NFL60 for 60% off plus free shipping. And we're back here. You can find me on Twitter at ChaosStriker34. I'm still me without the verified check, by the way. I'm just no parody account. That's my account. And our guest here, for Baltimore Ravens wide receiver, Super Bowl champion, Qadry Ismail. You can find him on Twitter over at I am Qadry Ismail and Q. We have a lot to talk about today. A lot of wide receiver content, Lamar, the draft. It's come up so fast for me. Like, it feels like yesterday I was, the start of free agency, the end of the playoffs. Draft's in less than a week now. How you feeling after everything we've had this offseason so far?
Wow. I mean, it's amazing how fast the timeline has gone. And I think a large part of it is just because of all the Lamar Jackson, as the world turns drama. And when you have one life to live, it just gets it to the point where these are the days of our lives. And somehow, some way, you just, as long as you're staying out of the general hospital and you're feeling fresh and ready to go, then all my children will be in a position of joy, happy, because football offseason means that there's going to be OTAs. OTAs mean there's going to be training camp. Training camp means that football season is right around the corner.
I went to New York a couple months ago, and in the hotel, sometimes like the TVs are on when you go in the room. And General Hospital was the show on the TV when I went in the room. So I'm like, hey, look at that! Now we have the General Hospital reference here. But it's been a lot because of the Lamar situation, and that's where, like, free agency, it kind of crept up on me, where I was getting ready to do the show for that Monday when free agency started, and I'm like, oh, all right, this all starts tomorrow. The draft, I think, has come a little bit slower. But there's a lot to talk about there because obviously needs kind of intertwine throughout the offseason queue, where your needs at the beginning of the offseason don't really mean that they're going to be needs when the draft comes, and the Ravens have made a couple of additions. So we'll talk about Odell a bit in the second segment, but there's another star receiver that's on seemingly everybody's mind right now when it comes to Baltimore, and that's DeAndre Hopkins. Now, Hopkins in Arizona, doesn't seem like there'll be a partnership there by the time 2023 rolls around. Maybe by some miracle there is, but seems like one way or the other Hopkins is not going to be there. So obviously then the trade conversations start, and seems like Baltimore's been one of the teams linked to him. Michael Lombardi coming out saying that Lamar gave the Ravens an ultimatum about, go out there, get me DeAndre Hopkins and Odell, and then we'll talk. Justina Anderson later clarified that there was no ultimatum, but did kind of maybe push the organization to say, hey, these are guys I'm interested in playing for. So that was Lamar's input. But Hopkins, we know how good of a player he is. One of the best receivers in this league right now. The contract situation does make it a bit iffy, but if the Ravens are somehow able to pull it off, if they were able to get DeAndre Hopkins on top of already having Odell now and Bateman and Duvernay and the rest of that offense, do you think that would make them instant Super Bowl contenders and Super Bowl favorites?
So it's interesting. Every time I look at the NBA, for example, and they have these superstars team up, like who was it? Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, when they went to the Nets, everyone started jumping on the bandwagon. Oh, they're going to win the championship. Oh, how many championships they're going to win? When you look at where they're at now, you look back on it, you're like, yeah, that didn't quite work out as well as we thought it would. You look at where Dallas is, I don't even know if they even made the playoffs. I don't think they even made the playoffs.
Nope.
Mavericks did? Yeah, no. So the Suns and the Phoenix Suns, sure, there's some strong opportunity for them, but, the West is the West. What am I trying to say? When it comes to football and the ultimate team sport, Yes, it absolutely helps when you have star players connecting up, and yes, it definitely is. Um, it favors you, but the injury bug and the injury factor can also come into play, and the unpredictable nature of the game comes into play, a la the Philadelphia Eagles, where, of course, they looked like, my goodness, no one is going to stop them. They get to the 49ers. Brock Purdy gets hurt. They go ahead and they just run roughshod over the NFC Championship game. They get to the Super Bowl. Second half of that Super Bowl, 28 unanswered points, or literally after Jalen Hurts, has his turnover, gets Kansas City right back into the game. You just don't know. I mean, there's so much that can go on positively, sure, but also negatively. So I'm not trying to just poo-poo your question. It's just that I want to be kind of a realist and say, yeah, I do like the fact that, this is a team that looks really good on paper. I do like the fact that, you could look at them and say, hey, they're going to compete really hard for what looks like, the AFC North going to be a back and forth battle. Pittsburgh making a play for Allen Robinson. Of course, what you got with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd over in Cincinnati. I mean, yeah, this all looks good. It all looks good, but you got to play. And I think, for Cincinnati, they got a great triumvirate of a receiving core, but that didn't guarantee them, years where they were just going to win it. I think this is a great opportunity. No question about it. Their defense, Baltimore's looks amazing, but there's still some question marks as far as depth at the D line, the corner situation. You know what? Whether you draft or not draft, heck, you don't even know if it's going to be a guarantee with the draft as far as how those young corners would react. But you know this to be true. They're going to make some noise when you talk about Hop and Odell, if in fact that is a team up, because you do know that Rashad Bateman, we saw him training, and obviously my trainer's eyes like, oh, there's some things there that, it's good to see, but there's still some things there. Devin Duvernay, we haven't seen him as far as his progress, but I think overall, depth-wise, no question about it, it puts them in a strong conversation.
Right. And I hear you. You don't want to make any assurances and say, oh, one player 100% before the season, even before the draft, even. You don't want to make those assurances. I do think it does catapult them into pure like top contender status, like the cream of the crop contenders if they were to make that deal, because you mentioned the defense and also, just what that would be offensively. But you're right. Injuries, I think a lot of this does have to do with health too. Can these guys stay healthy age wise too? But you missed out. You didn't say the paper Super Bowl champs. Cleveland, every year it was they acquired all these stars.
Yeah.
And then, we Sports Illustrated covers and features and magazines, and then they flopped out. So it has to be on. I think Hopkins does fit with them. Like, I think he fits what they want to do. But you can't just look at a team on paper and say, oh, it's Super Bowl 100% before the season starts. But I will say that I do think it would put them in that conversation 100%. But offensively, Q, I mentioned, Hopkins and Beckham and Bateman and Duvernay, the offense with Dobbins and Edwards and Andrews and Likely and hopefully Lamar there too. What would adding DeAndre Hopkins do to this offense, and how hard would it be to defend?
Mother of pearl. I've seen DeAndre Hopkins up close and personal a number of times, and I will tell you, like, his catch radius is easily that of Anquan Bolden's, easily. And Anquan had an amazing catch radius. I remember talking to Ozzie Newsome about it. We were just saying, what makes Anquan when, you don't see a guy with lightning speed and all that, but yet you just either a corner sleeps on him and he's just wide open, or he, like I said, making those contested 50-50 balls and it looks like it's 90-10 in his favor. He could take over games. And the game that came to mind, ironically enough, is the Arizona game where I think Anquan was out for first blood. I think DeAndre Hopkins is that type of a player where you challenge him, he absolutely can take over a game. And I saw him go up against, a healthy Jimmy Smith and made, Jimmy Smith, like, good golly, turn some heads like, wow, what's going on? you just can't, just underestimate Todd Monken's mind as far as getting, a guy of his caliber the ball. And then, of course, you talk about Odell. Go ahead and do something with D-Hop. Now, all of a sudden, you got Odell, who is hungry and looking ready to reestablish things and say he's king of the hill too. And then, of course, you got the Young Bucks, at tight end. I believe Mark Andrews is sitting there saying, "Oh, y'all all just gone ahead and just forgot about me. Don't y'all remember when I am and was the go-to guy for Lamar?" So ultimately, when you look at D-Hop and what he brings to the table, all of what I just said, it just gets heightened because you're competing against the other defense, but you're also competing with, trying to get your quarterback to notice you and your coordinator to call plays designed for you.
Yeah, and I think it's so crazy. We're talking about all these receiving weapons and the passing game, but I think we both just brushed over the run game and like what that would be, because it's just with Dobbins and Edwards there, that's a whole nother aspect you got to take into account there. Because John Harbaugh did say, he's gonna try to keep some of the concepts from Greg Roman, both pass and run, so both of those. But the latest on the Hopkins situation from Josina Anderson on the Crew said that she doesn't believe, based off of her understanding, that the Ravens aren't necessarily particularly trying to pursue Hopkins right now, partially because of contract level he's currently at, making 19 million. Well, the base salary is 19 million for him this year. Got another year on top of that too. So to me, it seems like the most likely avenue. Maybe it is right before the draft. Maybe it is after. But to me, I think if he's cut, that's where I think Baltimore could likely pounce, because then you have to take into account draft capital and all that. But coming up in our second segment, we'll talk about the receiver that is on the Ravens roster now in Odell Beckham Jr. We'll also take a look at Lamar Jackson and his contract situation and those updates with Jalen Hurts. So be sure to stay tuned. So lots to dive into on the show. But first, this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. And something exciting is coming to Built.com on April 22nd. I don't have all the details yet, but the excitement is real, and it's something you won't want to miss. If you know how Built works, they have the most incredible protein bars in the world. They do these amazing flavor drops with unreal flavors in limited quantity. So mark your calendars into Built.com on Saturday, April 22nd to be one of the first to discover what all the hype is about. I can't wait to see what the new flavor is. Make sure to use promo code LOCKEDON15 and you'll get 15% off your order. We're back here, Locked On Ravens, our second segment here on Purple Friday. Kevin Oestreicher still here with Qadry Ismail. And again, less than 1 week away to the NFL draft. We'll have all that draft content here on Locked On Ravens over the course of next week and weekend. 3 straight live shows. It's gonna be a busy week. I know you know that too, Q. But in terms of Odell, I think the signing, we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. What were your initial reactions to when you saw that the Ravens had actually pulled off getting him and then the contract that he got?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you looked at what happened at the owners' meeting, you thought, my God, everything is just halting and stopped and nothing's moving forward. Obviously, there was a lot to be made of with the Liars Luncheon. They held things so close to the vest, to the point where their PR guy and Chad Steele, he kind of had his outburst, and you saw what happened with that. I don't even think he was in the press conference or leading it when it came to Odell actually signing and then him being introduced to the Baltimore media. So it just, I don't know. It shows, one, the commitment, I think, to the fact that they're like, we want Lamar Jackson as our quarterback, one. But two, also, it's not just lip service, because if anything, to give that level of contract, to me, it's about Steve Bisciotti giving his blessing. And at the owners' meeting, him talking to Odell and having these conversations, because, yeah, I want to tell you, I want to be wanted. I'm telling you that. Now, what does that mean? Put your money where your mouth is. Period. End of discussion. I mean, going back to my day, my goodness, when you get paid, you know you want it. You know that team is like, yo, we like what you do. We know that you can help us win. Let's do it. Let's go. And that, to me, says it all. And I think that's why Odell, whether or not the Jets were bluffing or not, or however they were thinking, or whomever else was in the mix, The fact that Steve Bisciotti made the call and Eric obviously got it done is all we needed to know. And that kind of tells me, again, all I need to know when it comes to what they really truly think about Odell. I think they really are saying, hey, let's make a deal. Let's get this thing done. Now, still things are going to be worked itself out and all of the things. We obviously Jalen Hurts' deal. When you look at some of the pundits on the Twitter sphere, some of our local colleagues have got it right. Sarah Ellison, she really did an amazing job of kind of breaking down a contract, and nationally, people are looking at it and like, wow, Lamar got a big deal. And it's a matter of what is the counter offer, and if the counter offer is something where the Ravens have to even sweeten it a little bit more, ultimately, it comes down to Steve Bisciotti and him saying, okay, let's get this thing done the way in which he got it done with Odell Beckham.
Yeah, and I can tell you're itching to talk about Lamar. I'm going to throw one more Odell question at you, though. Just one, I promise. With Odell, it's been known the ACL. He tore the ACL in the Super Bowl, but apparently he didn't even have one to tear. He said he was playing without the ACL. And, a lot of different medical opinions have come out about how is this possible? What does he mean by that? Obviously, this is a receiver Q, soon to be 31 years old, did not play last year. There are concerns about the health, concerns about the level he can play to. I don't think the Ravens are getting New York Giants Odell. I think we're past that point. But what do you think he can bring to the offense? Are you concerned about the ACL and maybe what that does to his explosiveness or other aspects of his game?
Yeah, so as you know, obviously, I mean, it's funny because I'm wearing, my GOATA shirt, and GOATA stands for Greatest of All Time Actions. You and I, we've had many a discussion on movement. Literally, the F- that the organization got, regardless of what year the survey was taken, the mindset, literally, of training is antiquated. Period. End of discussion. And so, with that, the mindset of how to avoid an ACL tear or rehab from an ACL tear, as much as people are like, oh, we got to put the knee in positions to be able to handle those stressors and handle those different forces that are placed upon it. I am saying, when you look at the way in which the foot and ankle complex manages the ground, once the heel locks in the ground, the tibia rotates in or out, and the femur goes the opposite direction, in or out. That heel locks in, and a person hits you, ACL tear. That heel locks in, the ankle bone collapses, and the femur goes one way, and the tibia goes the other way, the ACL tear. You could be Hercules, you could be with or without an ACL, and you can say, oh, well, I, can deadlift, whatever. I can squat, whatever. All those movement patterns are heel in the ground, nervous system being educated to say, this is my comfort level. You're going to get injured. What am I trying to say for Odell? Don't put your heel in the ground when you're running routes. Make sure that you transfer your ankle, hip, weight, forces to the outside edges of the foot. Keep that strong arch of the foot and be able to move dynamically like you've been. You can move dynamically like you've been. You're going to play all 16 weeks, 17 weeks, and be fine going into the playoffs. That's the bottom line.
And for Odell, I think, taking a chance on a guy who has gone through this, didn't play last year, it is a risk. I mean, it's a risky contract, and especially when you look at the actual specs of the deal, Q, and it's the void years, which is it's a very new thing for the Ravens. They historically have not done that type of thing. It's a 1 year up to $18 million deal. The incentives obviously based off of touchdowns and catches and yards, but it's 15 guaranteed. And then if Odell doesn't sign the extension, instead of having those 4 void years where I think the number is $2.7 or $2.6 million per season for the next 4, that all goes into one. It's all consolidated into one. And that's an $11 million dead cap hit for 2024 in a year where you're maybe trying to sign Lamar again if he plays on the franchise tag this year, trying to add new pieces. So it is a risk, but I think it was a necessary overpay because the Sutton deal fell apart reportedly, according to Jess Rebeck. That was something that they were looking at. I would have rather had DeAndre Hopkins, but I don't think that Odell, I mean, obviously it has to be health permitting. I mean, a lot of the NFL, a lot of success, team success comes down to health. I mean, Q, you know that from your playing days. We've obviously witnessed it for the Ravens a couple of years ago when they had that 2021 season and even last year with Lamar's injury. So I'm hoping that health permitting for both Odell and even Rashad Bateman, if you want to go that far, those two will be able to form a duo together. But I think, again, you have to be able to put together those full 16-game, 17-game seasons now, or at least close to it. And if it's only 8 games and the partnership doesn't work out, if Odell leaves, if Lamar leaves, that's the disaster. It's the ultimate panic button situation for him. But let's talk about Lamar a bit, Q. I promised you one Odell question. Let's get back to Lamar. His contract is probably one of the most polarizing contract situations, debacles. I don't know. You don't call it a debacle yet because it hasn't come to a conclusion. But one of the most interesting situations we've had in, I think, NFL history. Now, Hurts got the deal from Philadelphia. Jalen Hurts, it's 5 years. He gets the 180 practically guaranteed, 110 guaranteed at signing. We've had right about 10 quarterbacks, signed contracts after Deshaun Watson got his deal. None of them have come close. If you want to talk about practical guarantees, if you want to talk about guaranteed at signing, the stat I've been pulling up is Deshaun Watson got the 230. The next closest quarterback in terms of guaranteed at signing is Russell Wilson, which is 106 million less than that. So doesn't feel like the Watson deal was a trend. Definitely feels more than time to say it's an outlier. Do you think the situation between Hurts and the Eagles and that contract, did it help the Ravens? Did it help Lamar? Did it hurt the Ravens? Did it hurt Lamar? What was your reaction when you saw the deal?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the total number, obviously 252 million, or 50, it was 52 or 55?
55, I think.
55, yes. So that number there, obviously there's some play on the final end of it all. And, I know the numbers are going to come out and all the other, capologists, pundits are going to go ahead and make their thoughts be known. But yes, the number that is about what you're going to get at signing. Totally wasn't the fat number that we saw with Deshaun Watson. Yes, you talked about Russell Wilson. Yes, you talked about what we saw with Arizona and the way in which they looked at the contract and putting in their language as far as, their whole deal. But, I think at the end of the day, with Jalen, he feels, hey, I got some mega money in my pocket. It's going to be called the richest deal. I think for quarterbacks, they're probably going to get around that third year and redo anyway, a la Joe Flacco and them. They're going to get another contract to kind of keep the cap number friendly. And so it's a perceived team friendly deal, but being that team friendly deal, you also looking at Jalen, saying, hey man, I got me over 100 some odd million in my pocket. And so I think when it comes to Lamar, yeah, the Deshaun Watson deal is looking more and more far-fetched. Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, and obviously Jalen now, those are some contracts that you could have said, hey, they could really get close to Deshaun, and they really didn't. So what are you going to do now? And I think that's where you could say, are you going to wait for Justin Herbert? Are you going to wait for Joe Burrow? And if you are, okay, what does that look like? And how long are you going to wait around? I mean, it looks like everything's going to be in that $50 million plus a year kind of a contract. And so I think some of the things that we look at from the way in which I believe, again, referencing back to our colleague here in town, Sarah, she was like, look, I was looking at numbers and Josh Allen and Lamar from the time that Josh got his deal and Lamar what was it, some 60 some odd million compared to 25 or 26 million that Lamar has gotten. I mean, that's new money compared to just regular money. Give me the new money, and we are still going to get another contract on top of that. And those are nuances that, from a new contract aspect of things, new money aspect of things, that an agent would know the fine-toothed comb details on to make it favorable for his guy. Now, if Lamar is feeling like he's marching to the beat of his own drum, if Lamar is feeling like, none of that really matters for him, and so be it, then you know what? Okay. You absolutely have the right to do that, but man, yeah. I mean, man, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been a lot. And I think, obviously the reports earlier in the offseason and before that indicated that, Lamar's looking for the fully guaranteed deal and it's all fully guaranteed. But then the later reports have come out that have said, well, he just wants more than Deshaun's 230. So whether that's 300 million with 240 guaranteed or 260 with 250, something of that. It just feels like, I think the Kyler deal told me a lot when it happened, because that was the deal directly after Deshaun Watson's deal. And again, I've said it multiple times. I think all the owners breathed a collective sigh of relief when that deal was not fully guaranteed, because I think that would have been the trend setter. And we just haven't seen that. No deal has come close to that. So again, I'm not going to fault Lamar for sticking to what he believes he's worth, but is he going to get that? Does it going to take a Joe Burrow or a Jalen Hurts or, not Hurts anymore? But
let me even say that, because, with Kyler, he didn't have the resume of any of these guys.
Sure.
And a matter of fact, right now he's looking like a coach killer. That's dangerous, better have a good organization, and the Bidwell organization is just, not me talking. Thank goodness I never had to play there, but cheap. And I know that, Paycor Stadium is no longer, Paul Brown Stadium. So I know that Cincinnati, they are a family-run organization too, and they can be very, tight with the purse strings. And so it'll be interesting to see what they look like. But from a resume standpoint, Jalen Hurts absolutely did look close to and on par with what we saw from Lamar. And his Super Bowl performance and the way he led that team was just, out of this world. Joe Burrow absolutely can go toe-to-toe. I think the writing's on the wall if Joe doesn't, overly kill for that Deshaun Watson, because, Russell Wilson absolutely has the career resume to compete with Lamar, but I think the recent years kind of a thing, not so much. So there's nuances there. It really is. And you're absolutely right. You're stating it correctly, from resumes to, the group of contracts and how business has been done. Usually when a guy gets a contract, that next guy, if he has a resume close to it, well, that's the starting point right there that I want to work with. So lots of nuances, again, like I said.
There are. And Lamar's taken up pretty much all, if not most, of Baltimore's offseason. Well, most, if not all, of Baltimore's offseason. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how long it continues for, because it's been a lot. It's been exhausting for a lot of people. But he even ties back to the draft. And coming up, we'll talk about the draft a little bit, how the Ravens could maneuver that with their 5 picks, and a lot more. So be sure to stay tuned. So the last to dive into on Locked On Ravens. We're back rounding out Locked On Ravens here on Friday. Kevin Ostreicher still here with Qadry Ismail and Q. The draft, I'll say it again, less than a week away. It's crept up on us, but the Ravens with 5 picks, it's going to be interesting to see how they end up maneuvering the draft board. I think 22 is their best trade chip. It could get them the most. Well, the market get them the most, but regardless of how that goes, I think 22 is their only realistic option to maybe acquire more, unless you trade a Patrick Queen, maybe a Devin Duvernay, a James Prochet. But let's say they stay at 22. To me, my two huge needs for them, well, one bigger than the other now, corner and wide receiver. There's a lot of conversation about others. People can talk about edge, people can talk about running back or offensive line or some of those others. But to me, if you were there at 22, based off of the roster now, would you take a corner or a wide receiver?
I would probably stick with wide receiver. I know that they were saying they were, a pretty rich cornerback room, but the way things have been going, I think you shoot for the stars again and try to see if you can hit one out the park. If that's the quote that Eric wants to use, then go ahead, bro, and let's start swinging.
And I think part of the reason here that I think people are still on the wide receiver train is one, because I think if you could get a JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, or Jordan Addison, those are kind of the consensus top four guys. It's not necessarily a class like last year, Q, when there was a run of like 5 of 6 wide receivers in like a span of 7 picks or something. But I do think that you have those 4 guys going in the first round if you're an NFL team. Then I think you have the Josh Downs of the world, who's like an early second, maybe a late first. But corner-wise, you talk about it, a very deep class this year. The Ravens at 86, I think, could still get a very good corner there. But there are also very good wide receivers they could take there too. Jonathan Mingo's a name I know a lot of people love. Marvin Mims from Oklahoma, another option there. So to me, I think that if there's like a no-brainer option, like I think Jackson Smith and Jigba to me is the top option at wide receiver. If he is there at 22, I probably take him. If Joey Porter Jr., the corner from Penn State, John Harbaugh talked about him in the press conferences at the Liars Luncheon as well. I think that's a no-brainer. But to me, Q, if there are like 6 or 7 guys that they like at 22, I say, why not trade back? You can trade back to 27, 28, maybe 29 or 30. If you can get a second round pick as well, that to me is a haul. If you can get a late first and a second, I think the second round is going to be huge this year. Are you team trade down, or would you rather just stay?
I have been covering the Ravens draft multiple years at the Castle when we were doing a ton of radio for their radio flagship station. And every year we would go on and on and on about the first round, and mother of pearl, that thing would happen. And next thing you know, trade out. You're like, what? We wasted all this time. And why do we waste this time? And, we break it all down. I think they're going to trade out. Like, they don't have a lot of picks. They love getting a lot of picks. And as much as Roquan Smith, they are saying he's their second round pick, and rightly so. Well, at the same time, I'm sure if they can acquire more picks, cool. Then go forth into the land we call the living. I don't know about the whole Patrick Queen thing. I could see that being a carrot dangled, and if it is, then I'm going to give you full credit for it, and I'm going to say, yep, Kevin told us. That's what's up. Said it from the very, very beginning, and now it came to fruition. If it doesn't, then so be it. But I think ultimately there's some options there. But yeah, you're right. It depends on the run of the defensive backs, and it depends on the run of the receiving class. I know there are some teams, the Jets traded away a guy, but they still need a guy. The Giants desperately need a guy. There's some teams there that need some receivers, and that's something that the Ravens got to look at and see who really is on the board. And I mean, they've done their due diligence for sure, unlike previous years. But we'll see how it all turns out.
Yeah, and the Queen point is super interesting. I actually talked about it with Cordell Woodland on 105.7 last night, and he asked me about it. So I want to bring up that point because I think to me, Queen is the player that you kind of look at with the Roquan Smith deal, and you're thinking, can they pay 2 linebackers big money contracts? I think Queen's going to get one, regardless of if it's with Baltimore or somebody else. But my thing is, with the 5th-year option still in limbo, I don't think I'd trade him this year. I think I would wait and trade him on the 5th-year option if they pick that up. Obviously, this is his contract year if they don't pick up the option. But to me, if you trade him, I'm not starting. Like, if that's the route they go, I'm not starting negotiations if I'm Baltimore at anything less than a second-round pick. And the reason for that is because if he walks and he signs that big money deal, they're going to get a 3rd-round comp pick anyway. So would you just trade the guy for a 3rd round pick now and not have Queen's production for a year, which I think would be a loss for them? Or would you just wait, play out the year, and then let him walk for a 3rd round pick anyway, but you have the production of a really good young linebacker on a rookie contract? So to me, I think if you're looking to trade Patrick Queen for the Ravens, if you don't want to move down from 22, or you're looking to acquire Hopkins or just get off of Queen for whatever reason it may be, I personally wouldn't trade him this year, but if they do, I wouldn't start at anything less than a 2nd round pick. What do you say about that, Q?
Oh boy, I'm with you. I mean, he's young, he's talented, he's fast. The game is slowed down for him. In McDonald's defense, I think he really found his niche and how he was utilized. So, if you have a coach that can put him in positions to flourish, more power to you. But that's going to be a big challenge. It's easier said than done. Chemistry is everything. And when you got it, that's where you get your money. That's why I think, again, going back to Lamar Jackson, that's why I think he is so deserving of what he's going to get, because I feel you can plug Lamar Jackson literally into any offense and they can't muck it up because of the fact that he's Lamar Jackson.
It's a fair point. And I think, when you lose a guy like Lamar, when you try to go and figure out who your next quarterback is going to be, the Ravens have been in the quarterback mediocrity realm of things for a lot of years, franchise-wise. You get a star like that, and I think it's hard to let a guy like that go, especially because Lamar is their offense. They built the offense around Lamar, as any team should do for their quarterback. You should want to play to the strengths of your quarterback. So I think it was a good pairing for them. But all right, Q, official draft prediction from you. I want to get it from you here. 1st round, we talk about players like Zay Flowers, Joey Porter Jr., Jordan Addison, some of these guys. You said that you think they're going to trade down, or at least you want them to. But what's your official prediction? And if it's a player that you have in mind, you can say who it is. But do you think they stay? Do you think they trade down? And who's your ideal guy?
What's the young man from Tennessee, the receiver?
Jalen Hyatt?
Jalen, that dude is that dude. And I think with a staff, literally, what is it, Coach Williams, Keith, he is going to definitely put him in a great position to win. When you got receivers, and if they get DeAndre Hopkins, if they don't, but you got Odell Beckham and you got Rashad Bateman, Hyatt, Jalen would fit so well. Mind blown. I think Todd Monken would be like, go ahead and try to stop. Oh, did you see JK? He just dominated you. Oh, my bad. Kohler just went over the middle for a 20-yard gain because y'all was trying to take away everybody else. Well, here go Jalen right down the field, right down, a wide open touchdown. Because all y'all try to go man to man. I just sent him in a quick short motion. Whoop, deep over. Oh, I'm sorry, Linderbaum and them. They just got a year better. Another year removed from all the issues with Stanley's ankle and there. Oh, he's all good. Okay. The play fake threw you off. Everybody kind of sucked up. Draw over the top. Can we just get an amen, brother?
Man, that's I'm telling you. Now for Hyatt, I think he's somebody that a lot of people have in the late 1st, early 2nd. So if you could trade down, no, you're taking him?
I'm saying if we get fancy with the spices and we need to trade back because he's going to be there, cool. But if everybody is making a run, bam, get him. 22 would be fine. Later is even better. I don't mind him. I'm serious. I do not mind him at 22.
And that's where I think the runs, you talked about it. It's really important because, if we saw it last year, I think the Ravens thought they were going to get a receiver. At least that's what some of the reports said. And everybody went thinking, oh, God, we're trading Marquise Brown. So what do we do now? So they took Kyle Hamilton. I think it was still a fine pick, but there's a run on receivers. You might not want to risk, if he's the Ravens guy, you might not want to risk him falling and potentially getting taken before you're able to get him in a trade back. So maybe it's 22, maybe it's not, but there are a lot of intriguing options for them in this draft for sure. But Q, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on today and talking Lamar, talking Odell, DeAndre in the draft. And I'm telling you, once this draft is over, I think we'll have more of an idea about the direction of the team, the receiver room, the corner room, and who knows, maybe Lamar Jackson.
Jalen Hyatt is going to catch a touchdown from Odell Beckham on an end around.
Could you imagine that? Could you imagine that? That would be incredible. I would love that. I would love that. So maybe it happens. Maybe Hyatt's the guy, but I'm excited to see what the Ravens do in this draft for sure. But Q, I appreciate you. That's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Be sure to again subscribe to our YouTube channel over here in video form. Also, anywhere you get your podcast in audio form, same show, both audio and video. When we get back here on Monday, it's more Ravens talk, more draft content here. So be sure to stay tuned for that, and I'll see you right back here on Monday.